Welcome everyone to our discussion of GitOps in the financial sector. I'm going to let my panel members introduce themselves, their role, and maybe just give a rating on where you feel like you are with your platform operations at this point. So I'll just go down the line.
Okay. Morning, everyone. My name is Manel. I'm from Banco Sabadell. It's one of the main financial companies in the financial Spanish financial government. And my role is I'm the infra and cloud infrastructure, leading all the infrastructure and cloud environment in terms of technology and strategy. And our situation now, we are two positions. One, the legacy platform we are using more traditional change to production, and the new one based on cloud native, based on microservices, and we are working hard to deploy Argo CD and all the GitOps environment.
Hello, I am Erwin Veranga from Discover Bank. I am an enterprise architect focusing on application platforms. My role is to work with other infrastructure teams and our compliance and security teams creating these platforms for our business partners and application developers. I would say we're pretty advanced in our use of application platforms, and looking forward to helping out.
Great. Thank you. My name is Alisha Gryniewicz. I work at Morgan Stanley in the Enterprise Technology Division on the Compute and Storage Engineering team. My role is the Chief Product Owner for Kubernetes Services. That means I run the platform engineering teams that design and deliver our different flavors of Kubernetes, both on-prem and in the public cloud. I would say from an operational standpoint, where we are in this journey is just to give you some magnitude of size. We run about 500 clusters globally. 300 of those are OpenShift and are made up of about 2,000 physical worker nodes. We run over 100,000 containers on OpenShift, I would say daily, and it's comprised of all sorts of applications to support our financial services business.
My name is Baldi. I am the manager of Kubernetes platform engineering at M&T Bank. And so I manage all of the guys that do all of the work as opposed to on Kubernetes. We have a very similar story to Joseph in that we have a set of legacy clusters, all very imperatively managed. We're currently transitioning those, and our entire process is all to GitOps. So any and all new clusters are all deployed with GitOps, managed, maintained, all through GitOps.
Great, and I'm Ian. I'm with our Red Hat Consulting organization, here to grill our panel members. So who wants to start with, how did you really get started with this journey from ClickOps, CLI Ops, over to GitOps? Who wants to jump in first? You've got a mic, so you get to go first.
Okay, then I explained in the introduction. We are the big problem here, the big challenge we've got, or I think all the people here has got, is how to implement this kind of technology, this kind of change of mindset in people that are working during 25 years in a legacy model. Then our approach in this point, our concern in this point is just we start to think in GitOps, think in DevOps, and think in this new paradigm on how to manage the software, and also how this software arrives to production in all the new methodologies, the methodology we are applying in new product that we are delivering at this moment. Then we are not applying this methodology in the legacy platform and our legacy more out of relationship with the mainframe, for example. This is our thinking, our situation in this point.
Alisha, I'm curious, if you're managing 500 clusters, I assume you're doing that with like 600 people manually, or how did you scale?
No, absolutely not. So it's been about a 3-year journey, and I would say our team has increased in size, but not the same size as I would in our traditional environment. So in 3 years, I think we've gone from, I think, 12 to 14 members. So really key, right, is automation, but I think there's an opportunity we took to sort of enforce standards and going to the new platform. So any application going to production, we have kind of like 3 rules that I like to follow, which the first is you must be deployed to at least 2 clusters. I don't particularly care if you're running hot or hot-warm, but I do care that you're in 2 different clusters. Your application must be rebuild safe. At first, we didn't stipulate that must be with GitOps, but a little bit of how did we get started, a little bit of drink our own champagne. We started in infrastructure. We needed to build clusters. We needed to build them rapidly. We needed them to look the same, no matter where they were deployed. So that's where we leveraged GitOps and storing, the configuration as code. So we knew every time we built a cluster, it would look the same, it would have the same software. So that's sort of the first 2, and then the third is really not allowing, we don't do any in-place upgrades. So all of our clusters are full destroy and rebuilds. So that enforces you to make sure you're leveraging GitOps because you don't want to be there manually reinstalling your application afterwards.
But it's so fun. And I think this prompts Drew pretty well, because I know you're kind of in a similar place now. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we started off in a very, as I kind of said there, imperative approach, and that worked well at small scale. But we have a number of efforts and initiatives going on right now that are going to really exponentially increase the number of clusters we have. And as soon as I started seeing those numbers and realizing how much work that's going to end up being in our current or legacy methodology, that really got us looking real quick. How can we do this at scale much quicker, much easier? And then ultimately, obviously, GitOps was the approach we landed on. So now we actually manage things at a tier level. So it doesn't matter if we have 4,000 dev clusters or 1, we make a single change to a config, push it to the repo, and it's done. Similarly for dev, cert, prod, all of your different tiers, but all at a tier level.
Great. So, you all have gotten, I think, pretty far on your operations adoption of GitOps. What has it been like getting application developers to adopt kind of a similar mindset for how they deploy their applications? So, like, you can redeploy your cluster, but how about their apps? Erwin?
It's been a challenge. It's been a partnership as well, because I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with applications. They like their processes. They like how they do. They get used to what they want to do. And a lot of it is just showing them the benefits in that, like everything we mentioned on the infrastructure, everything's repeatable. Everything becomes more streamlined. Everything becomes the same. And to the application, it's selling those same benefits of that. You could have all this as well. And for a lot of us in the financial industry, it helps for also those downstream processes when you think of like compliance. Now the app team can now prove that you did something the same across everything. Like we mentioned, I don't care if you're on 1 cluster, 2 clusters, if you're in this region or that region, prove that everything for you is consistent. So making sure those benefits are known and showing that it's best for not just the infrastructure teams, also for the app teams, and eventually your business.
So is it true for all of you that rather than mandating your application developers do a certain way, you're giving them a path that maybe is more effective and encouraging them to come? Is that accurate?
I'd say yes, very much so. Yeah, we provide as much documentation and make it as easy as possible as we can, and have talks like these as often as we can to share that information. And you build it, they'll come.
Alisha, looks like someone want to hand her one.
Sure. I was going to say there's a certain degree of mandate, yes, but it's can be a turnoff sometimes as well. If it's working well, it goes a lot into set up your application to be fully GitOps enabled, right? So we did 2 things. We created onboarding teams, one to teach about the concepts of GitOps and develop some tooling. So one of the things that really helped developers is we created what we called a GitOps bootstrap, which will you can run as a little CLI utility. It'll connect to Git, and we'll set up your cluster configuration right next to in your repo, or right next to where you run where you have your application code. And that just makes the setup process a little bit easier to start. And then you use the onboarding and the training teams to really help. How do you get from, I started developing, now push it all the way to prod, and that's where we created reusable images and blueprints. So you can clone a repo, clone images, make them your own, modify them as you advance through the environments from development to production.
Yeah, and fully agree. But also, we think not only in this onboarding platform that allows to the different developers to understand how we manage software in our companies. Also, we are, in our case, we define different architecture pieces that, in this case, allows the different development, nothing how I need to connect to the mainframe, how I need to consume storage, how I need to consume database. In this case, there is different pieces that architecture team, this can our team deploy to developers to consume the platform. I think it's, at the end, we want that developers are code efficiently, and we can do this allow to the defining to the users, to the developers, sorry, these pieces of software that allows to define the homogeneous way to consume mainframe, storage, databases, and things like that.
Great. So, I mean, I think you've all touched on this a little bit, but I mean, there's the technology paradigm shift, but also process change. So, what kind of, challenges that have you overcome on that side of it, like combining these two things?
So, did you want to go for it? I would say one of the big things we introduced was what I like to call a shared responsibility model. So, I think technology, and I'm a firm believer that technology is a catalyst for process change. Every time you introduce a new technology, there's an option to reevaluate your current processes. In our case, we developed what we called a shared responsibility model. I had my early adopters, my 20% super developers who wanted full control and wanted to know everything about Kubernetes on one side of the spectrum. And then I had the other side of the spectrum, which are really my developers who was writing a little chunk of business logic and just want to deploy their app and update it. Between those camps, it's a little bit of a slider. And I think what we did to make sure we're still adhering to process and controls is develop that model whereby the developers who wanted full control over their clusters, over their deployments, we granted them that access. In some cases, they have temporary cluster admin.
That's brave.
However, if anything happens, they've already signed the terms and conditions. I've physically made them sign them. The only way we will bring them back into compliance to fix their cluster is to rebuild them. Versus the other side, where the clients that are, I just want you to deploy my app for me, please, is literally they have no access to the cluster. They don't know where it is. They don't know the namespace it's deployed on. They don't even know the repo for their cluster config. They just give us what they want deployed. We deploy it for them. And it becomes completely under our control. So if we want to rebuild, we'll rebuild it for them at that time.
That's a lot of great options. Does anyone else want to chime in on theirs?
I think one of the biggest things with our process changes was finding the champions, the ones that showed that, hey, we were successful in doing this, and we introduced all these new ways of doing it, but also that it was easy consumable. So when you find those champions, the word gets out, and they talk to other developers, or other developers go to them for help, and they show that, yes, what we did before, while that still works and still does what we need to do, the way we could do it now is actually a little bit better, and it gets us more focused on things we want to get done from the business side as opposed to just some of those lower BAU everyday things, the automation, and those champions telling that you can now focus your efforts somewhere else.
That's great. So then, I mean, and you talked a little bit about this, Alisha, but as you're trying to introduce developers to the new platform, there can be a hesitancy about, like, it's a lot of new terms, a lot of new tech, and you can want to and can abstract a lot of that from them. by building software templates or golden paths or what have you. How do you balance that level of abstraction for the developers so they can just focus on their app development versus them having ownership over how their applications are deployed and actually understanding how Kubernetes works?
Have people there to help them every step of the way. It's really what it a lot of times comes down to. There are different technology levels and knowledge levels, right? So some people do just kind of pick up and go, and they do want cluster admin, and we're not as brave to actually give it to them. But they do want that level of access. But others do need some help, and really try to build out some teams to be there to help them and assist them on their journey, and then also educate them, right? Just getting them out there is not enough, because then if that app goes down, what do they do, right? If all they do is copy and paste or use your templates to get in there, they still have to figure out how to get themselves out of a bad spot.
Great. So then, when you have a lot of teams involved in doing the onboarding, how do you coordinate all that, right? Like if you've got so many clusters or so many people involved, what friction can happen between, they need storage, they need networking, they need, compliance and security, they need to be onboarded on the platform. How do you reduce all that friction for the 10,000 people they need to interact with?
It's not easy. It's not easy. Our idea in this case, we are thinking that to define APIs and to define automated process that generate this kind of isolation between, for example, development need storage and how we build this project. The developer did not be careful about the storage. We give the storage to the developer. This is we think, but it's not easy. It's not easy to answer this question. Sorry.
Anyone else want to chime in on interactions with multiple teams?
I guess I'll just say, what we try to do is make things very consumable and offer services so that interaction is nice and easy. I need this, and here's the information you require to give it to me. So that's kind of been our approach.
Great, and thanks for everyone for sticking around. I know we're running late, but we do have a option to win swag when we're done, so stick around. So as we wrap up here, what for each of you, how does the audience get started? What's your words of wisdom? A pitfall to look out for, a thing to try. What should they take away?
Is to define a different and a specific group to define this kind of methodology. This works for us. We define a specific group separate from the rest of the bank, and this group start to work in this methodology because it's quite difficult to change the mindset of people that works during 25 years or 20 years or 15 years in one methodology to apply. Then our concern in this case, the advisory that I can share with you is to define a defined group and a specific group to work together from the beginning in Greenfield to deploy the platform. This is my concern.
Great.
Yeah, and building on all that, be deliberate in what you do, and when you are deliberate, follow the rules of, not rules, but tenets of open source. You're transparent and you're open and collaborating. The more you tell people what's going on and what your intentions are, and working with them, because you can't just build a platform by yourself. You need a lot of partners. So as long as you're deliberate in what you want, building those teams, you're transparent in what you want to do and how it's going to be consumed and who you want to work with. And then out there, you just go out there and collaborate.
Open source is a pretty good model. I like it. All right, what about you, Alisha?
I would echo a little bit there of partnership, right? Two things. One, find out who your friends and family are. So don't start with your biggest, most critical business application first. One of the things I would say is maybe start with your IT for your IT for IT applications, or the first applications we ran on top were infrastructure based. So running Kafka, running databases, some things that were friends and family within our peers within infrastructure, just to get to learn the platform. So it's about develop those partnerships. to creating that space for your teams to be able to fail and learn gracefully. So some of the things we do is we have mock incidents and failure Fridays, where we will walk through either a previous incident that one person had to endure while they were on call together, or we will actually mock an incident, sort of in the style of chaos engineering, so that we can walk through it. And now we don't do that necessarily in production, but at least the whole team's involved on Friday and can walk through step by step logically what they would try, how they would diagnose, and it provides, one, a safe space for people to make mistakes, and then two, a great opportunity to learn without having to learn when there really is an incident ongoing and feeling that extra pressure.
So there's a downside to going last in that everybody can take all of your answers.
Be creative.
So I guess what I'll say then is listen to your users. A lot of times, as engineers, we might try to think through every scenario and everything we want to offer, how we want to do things. And if you don't put your users in that conversation, you might be building something they don't even want. So definitely involve your users early on, listen to them, and involve them in the process.
That's my favorite one. And I will give a recommendation, which is ask your Red Hatter because we do this with a lot of clients every day. You have to do it once. We have to do it with all of you all the time. So we have experience from all these and other cases. So the prize for anyone who's stuck around, if we can get a couple people to say, what did you take away from this? What are you going to go home and do? And the first couple people who volunteer, I think I have some cool Red Hat swag for you. So I see one hand in the back and one right here. Can you run this mic back for me?
So what I would take away from this is don't be afraid to communicate. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Talk to your customers, talk to your internal stakeholders, and actually get them on board with what you're trying to do.
I love it. Perfect. I'll take that as a valid takeaway. I think someone said that. I saw a hand right here, I think.
I would second what Alisha mentioned. Mock incidents, I think. It's very hard, once an incident is closed and resolved, nobody ever goes back and see what happened. Nobody tries to connect the dots back. It's very important to go back and see why that thing happened. I would take that, the mock incidents thing. And also, someone said partnership, I forgot. But yeah, I'm an operations guy. We have a DevOps team in between the applications team and us. So we don't know what's happening exactly on the other side of the fence, because we always believe in what DevOps team says. I think partnering as an operation guy directly with the application people is very important, I believe. I would take that too, yeah. And I appreciate for giving cluster admin access to developers. It's where, I wouldn't do that.
Thank you, and here's your swag. So thanks again to my panel members. So a round of applause for them, and thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you around.